Let's read a couple articles about DSA. I just saw a couple articles that caught my eye, so I'm just going to read them, see what's going on. We have two articles here. We got New York Times and we got New York Post. I'm sure that they will have the exact same tone and timbre, but there's only one way to find out. Okay, this is from the New York Times. The Democratic Socialists winning elections far from New York. I'll probably start by reading the article and then I'll give my thoughts. I think sometimes I front load stuff a little too much. Okay, so I'm just going to start over. The Democratic Socialists winning elections far from New York City. They won Democratic state legislative primaries in Buffalo and Syracuse, showing how the party's messaging and ground game can work outside New York City. This is by Benjamin Orsex and Mark Sommer. And this is from July 12th, 2026. As the national co-chair of the Democratic Socialists of America, Megan Romer has worked for plenty of campaigns and knocked on all sorts of doors across the country. But for Miss Romer, there is something special about Buffalo that made it the best canvassing city in the country. And it's not just because she hails from nearby Cayuga County. Everybody has got a front porch, she said. It's such a nice place to spend a Saturday talking to voters. Ms. Romero speaks from recent experience. She was part of a volunteer team that knocked on around 25,000 doors in the western Buffalo area, helping Adam Bojack to a decisive win in last month's three-way Democratic primary for state assembly seat. If Mr. Bojack wins in November, he will become the state legislature's first Democratic Socialist to represent western New York. For this particular district, I don't know how competitive it is when it comes to Democrat versus Republican. So if they don't tell me in this, I don't feel like looking it up. But roughly 150 miles to the east in nearby Syracuse, a similar army of fired up volunteers knocked on thousands of doors in support of Maurice Brown, a Democratic Socialist. The effort paid off. Mr. Brown narrowly defeated Assemblyman William B. Magnarelli. Oh, that sounds Italian. Uh-oh. Is this more Italian erasure from Zoran Mamdani? This is a reference, by the way, to I guess he forgot to put like the Italian flag on like the enclaves of New York or something, and all of the Italian Americans freaked the fuck out. So I don't know. Maybe it's broader than Zoran. Maybe the DSA is also anti-Italian American. Anyway, narrowly defeated Assemblyman William B. Magnarelli, a 28-year incumbent, by 82 votes, a primary that saw about 6,700 people cast their ballots. 82 votes, that's close. The primaries in New York last month underscored the continued emergence of the left as a political force. Nowhere was that more evident than New York City, where two Democratic Socialists defeated more established rivals in Democratic House contests, and another leftist candidate took down a House incumbent. But for national Democrats wrestling with how to channel the enthusiasm for populist outsiders without alienating general election voters in November, the victories in Buffalo and Syracuse, hundreds of miles from New York City and its Democratic Socialist Mayor Zoran Mamdani, might also prove instructive. Yeah. I mean, look, this is so frustrating to me because we already have stats about this. Zoran Mamdani overperformed with Trump voters. Previous Trump voters voted for Zoran Mamdani at like higher levels, right? Than they had voted for other previous mayors. Like, we already have the Democratic Socialists of America's like strategy for messaging to like disaffected Trump voters or Republicans or independents works. It works way better than neoliberal centrism, like consultant speak. Like, of course it does. I mean, really, it should be common sense. Like, in my opinion, it should be common sense. But we have stats now to back it up. Like, anyway, let's see how the New York Times, this new information that's making its way to the New York Times. Let's see how they interpret it. Give me one sec. I have to drink a lot of coffee while I'm reading this because for some reason I think that I just don't project right or something, or my voice isn't built for talking for long periods of time, so I always end up losing my voice as I read more and more articles for you guys. But I power through the pain because you guys deserve it. But for national Democrats wrestling with how to channel the enthusiasm for populist, I just read that. Candidates and organizers said in interviews that voters seemed to care most about affordability and had a sense that government was in need of generational change. That thirst for change was evident in Buffalo. Bonnie Bullard, a nanny who lives on Buffalo's densely populated west side, where Mr. Bojack received just under 66% of the vote, said that she felt compelled to vote for Mr. Bojack after he was endorsed by Senator Bernie Sanders, a Democratic socialist from Vermont. I am tired of politics as usual, not just with the Republican Party, but also with the Democratic Party. I feel Democratic socialists are listening to the everyday person. See? This is what I'm telling you. This messaging works. This messaging works, man. It works. They're going to try to propagandize against it. They will. They're going to do their best, but they can't stop it because it's an effective strategy. And it's an effective strategy that was neglected by the Democrats because the Democratic Party doesn't want to actually offer material improvements to the working class. That's the problem. That's the problem, is that the establishment in the Democratic Party doesn't actually want to do that. And so they're unable to do this type of messaging. But that is exactly why it's inevitable that people who do actually want to do that and do want to improve the material conditions of the working class will inevitably defeat them because they're playing with like their hands tied behind their back. The Democratic Party is playing with their hands tied behind their back. The Republican Party is also, in some regard, less of a regard, also playing with their hands tied behind their back because they, like, I guess what I would say is they don't have as much of a problem with it because they can just lie and the corporate oligarchs that back them will know that they're lying and know that they won't do anything. This is a lot like, this is how Trump came to power, is because he just like lied. That like he pretended to have some left populist, proclivities when it comes to the economy than previous Republican candidates did. But the corporations and stuff were fine with that because they knew he wasn't going to do anything about it. But anyway, so like that same thing that like that is causing obviously all of the corporations, the centers of power in America to come after the DSA, it's also a benefit for the DSA too, and can be wielded as a benefit because number one, people hate those people anyway. So when they're attacking you, that's a good thing, right? That means that you're looking better. When the Democrat establishment and neoliberalism, the neoliberal hacks and consultant class are all attacking you, that gives you more, not less. That gives you more credibility. But then also you don't have to mealy mouth your way around these concepts. You don't have to be like for instance, you can just openly say, yeah, I want to take all of the money from billionaires, or yeah, I want to create single-payer healthcare. I want to completely and totally eliminate the insurance industry. It's superfluous. We don't need it, right? You can go out there and just say those things, where the Democratic Party is not able to go, like the corporate centrists are not allowed to go out and say that because that's a no-no to their donors, right? Anyway, sorry, that was a little bit of a ramble, but let me get back to the article. And let me get a drink of coffee. Christine McMullen, a 35-year-old tattoo artist, agreed. I think sometimes traditional Democrats are more worried about making their donors happy. What did I just say? Where socialists are more concerned about what they can do for people. Said Miss McMullen, who works at Crucible Art Collective on the west side of Buffalo. Mr. Bojack and Mr. Brown said they were somewhat surprised that their ties to the DSA did not elicit more skepticism or curiosity. Just 5 years ago, India Walton, a Democratic socialist who had an upset victory in the Democratic primary for mayor in Buffalo, lost in the general election. Her opponent, Byron Brown, the incumbent mayor at the time, when was this? 5 years ago? Okay, buddy. The incumbent mayor of the time ran an aggressive write-in campaign that portrayed her as an extremist. That was 5 years ago, buddy. Things have changed. Things have changed significantly. That was before Trump. That was before Trump too. Do you understand that? Like, people are more pissed at the Democratic Party now than they have ever fucking been, because the Democratic Party establishment decided that their strategy for Trump this time was to roll over and die. Let MAGA do whatever the fuck it wants, and then hope that that became so unpopular that they could ride that that anti Trump wave back into power. That was their strategy. That is pissing off a significant portion of the Democratic Party base. We are in a completely different era. This is irrelevant, in my personal opinion, this thing from 5 years ago. I think it was also close, by the way. I think that it was also close, if I remember correctly. But still, that was 5 years ago. This is different. We also have Zoran. Zoran changed everything for DSA. I won't lie. I think that he reignited the DSA as a organizing movement. So there's that as well. But the candidate said that the attention given to Mr. Mamdani's win last year has made voters in Western and Central New York more comfortable with the Democratic Socialist brand. Bernie Sanders chipped away at that, but then Zoran Mamdani was a huge help, Mr. Bojack said. Dude, I feel like I'm just predicting 2 paragraphs in advance. Maybe I should stop talking and just read it. Because they all just say what I expect them to say based on my understanding of the world and my understanding of politics. He continued. Zoran wasn't successful because he talked about being a socialist. Exactly. He just said what he was going to do. Our messaging is broadly popular. People want to tax the rich and expand childcare. I don't care what letter is next to their name. Yep. Maxwell Bowman, who helps lead the DSA's Buffalo chapter, said that after Mr. Mamdani's victory last year, the chapter saw its membership grow from around 200 members to about 500 members. That's that Mamdani bump, baby. I was part of that too. I had been wanting to be fair, I had been wanting to join DSA for a while, but the Zoran victory felt like, if not now, then when am I going to do it, right? So I finally did it around that time. And over time, more voters seem receptive to the group's economic platform. People are feeling that squeeze even if you're wealthy and tucked away in the suburbs, said Mr. Bowman, who also served as Mr. Bojack's field director. And while their opponents mostly relied on paid canvassers, Mr. Bowman said that his team of volunteers actually knew Mr. Bojack and believed in his policies, a personal touch and conviction that is sometimes lacking in traditional get-out-the-vote efforts. The old Buffalo establishment is getting, this is interesting. They're saying, okay, that confused me for a second. And while their opponents mostly relied on paid canvassers, yeah, Mr. Bowman said that his team of volunteers actually knew Mr. Bojack and believed in his policies. This is huge, by the way. This is, as someone who goes out and canvasses like regularly, they're like, I don't know. I've never interacted with a paid canvasser before, so I don't know for sure how they do it or how they come across, but I know how I come across, and that I am always trying. I feel an obligation. I feel a sense of duty when I go out and canvass, that I don't want to mess it up. I'm trying to be the best that I possibly can be. I'm trying to communicate as effectively as I possibly can for the candidate that I'm trying to get elected, which in this particular circumstance is Cori Bush. I feel a sense of like duty to that. I think that that's something that would obviously be left out when it comes to paid canvassers. I think when you're a paid canvasser, you're just going out, you're saying the talking points, and then you're moving on, right? I think there's a difference. Okay. A personal touch and conviction that is sometimes lacking in traditional get-out-the-vote efforts. The old Buffalo establishment is getting washed out, Mr. Bowman said. We're filling that void because we're the only political project around here that actually motivates voters. Mr. Brown, known to most as Mo, also benefited from DSA volunteers who fanned out to suburban pockets of their districts, where the group's policies may not have been received as warmly. Mr. Bowman said that the parts of the district in Buffalo were easier to canvass because of the city's density and its more progressive slant. But in the last month before the primary, the campaign began to venture into suburbs like Hamburg to try to lure more mainstream voters. A prelude to what Mr. Bojack and Mr. Brown will need to do for November's general election. I don't know if I would call them like mainstream voters necessarily, but like more suburban voters, sure. I don't know. I think that that's kind of, this is just pet peeves or whatever, but a little bit of like city erasure, like this, or like the cities, the enclaves of like city, like that, like before you get to suburbs, have so much more people in such a densely populated like section that, like, I don't know, maybe these would be considered more mainstream. I don't know what their demographic looks like, how many people are suburb, exurb, or city livers in that state, but I think a lot of times, or in that district, but I think a lot of times people, just because the size of the city is smaller compared to like the sprawling nature of suburbs and exurbs, underestimate just the sheer volume of people that live there. Okay. Mr. Bojack succeeded against his two opponents by garnering about 61% of the vote in the more vote-heavy Buffalo, overcoming roughly 33% he pulled in Hamburg. If the two men prevail, they will be part of a cohort of 16 DSA-backed legislators in Albany next year. This would represent the largest number of Democratic Socialists in the state capital ever, and that doesn't even account for the lawmakers who agree with the group's platform but are not officially part of the organization. Yeah, there's lots of people who are like adjacent to DSA, but I always like to keep those people distinct from in people's brains, and reiterate that they are not necessarily DSA candidates. People like Abdul El Sayed, who is, you know, a great candidate, I think, personally, is not a DSA candidate, right? He might have a DSA suggested vote, like that's something that DSA does, is they have like a suggested vote for, but they might, I don't think that they endorse outside of actual DSA members. Same with like the Graham Plattner situation or whatever. DSA did not in any way endorse Graham Plattner. He was not a DSA candidate, but he may have been a suggested vote, like when, you know, and a suggested vote just means like we would prefer you vote for him over the opponent, aka Susan Collins or whatever, right? In that particular circumstance. So like I do like to keep a distinction there, because DSA is really good about who it picks as candidates, and other organizations are sometimes not, as we learned with Graham Plattner. So like DSA has a great vetting process. It also has a lot of like they pride very heavily you being like a movement person inside of the organization, like you being actively involved for years and stuff, that you have lots of people that have experiences with you and can vouch for you and trust you. Like there's a lot of that when it comes to DSA, which makes, in my opinion, DSA candidates just be like a lot more electable and a lot better candidates, generally speaking. That's not to say that there can't be like other good candidates that are like Bernie Kratz outside of DSA. Like I said, Abdul El Sayed I think is a great candidate personally, but it does mean that like they're not going to be held up to the highest standards that DSA would hold up their own endorsed candidates. Okay. Anyway, this would represent blah, blah, blah. Okay. The wins point to a good amount of sclerosis in the old line, consultant machine blob. And that's an interesting word. I've only ever heard that in terms of like spines or whatever, like multiple sclerosis. But anyway, sorry. The wins point to a good amount of sclerosis in the old line consultant machine blob, and that the era of simply bombarding people with mailers and television ads is maybe over, said Miss Romer, the national DSA co-chair. In Syracuse, Rachel May, a Democratic state senator, said that there was not much ideological separation between Mr. Brown and Mr. Magnarelli, but Mr. Brown was able to capitalize on voter frustration. That's what I'm saying. If you're associated with the establishment right now, then that's a disadvantage. You don't want to be associated with the establishment right now. People here feel that the Democratic Party's business as usual is not me in the moment, said Miss May, who also represents Syracuse and was one of the few elected officials to back Mr. Brown. I think people who are not necessarily of the same ideological spectrum as Mo still want someone who is going to fight in new ways because the old ways have not been working, she added. He tapped into some of that. Another modern day concern became an issue in Syracuse and Buffalo. Mammoth data centers used to power generative artificial intelligence. A state bill sponsored by a DSA lawmaker that was passed in Albany last month would create a one-year moratorium on new data centers. Data centers are the perfect wedge issue, right? They're the perfect thing to put front and center on your campaign. Same with Israel, right? Israel is more for the Democratic like primary, because I think I got this from Hassan, who said this, but like Israel is a 90-10 issue in in the realm of Democrats. It's, I think, a 60-40 issue in the populace at large, but it's a 90-10 issue when it comes to Democrats. Data centers, on the other hand, are a 90-10 issue when it comes to everybody. Everybody fucking hates them. It's bipartisan hatred for data centers. And it's an easy, so where Israel is like a litmus test for the Democratic primary of where you're, whether you will align with corporate interests versus people, like the like working class or whatever. Because if you're too scared to stand up to AIPAC, stand against the genocide, then you're clearly going to be too scared to like stand up for Medicare for all, or you're going to be too scared to stand up, because obviously those are like lesser, like they're like, our healthcare industry is evil, but it's still a lesser evil compared to like a genocide, right? So like that's a perfect like litmus test of like where your priorities are going to lie. Same thing goes with data centers. It's a perfect litmus test because if you're on the side of data centers when it's a 90-10 issue, then you're already just showing how you're going to govern. It's very obvious to people how you're going to govern. So that's just another like wedge issue to always put on your on a DSA candidate of like, we are going to stop all data centers, and in fact we're going to destroy any data centers that have already been built. We are going to I don't know, take all of their GPUs out and have a free GPU day for anybody who wants to come get a new GPU can come grab it from the data center. Like just have like policies like that and people come on board. Mr. Brown recounted attending a community meeting in the small town of Lysander, where a data center had been proposed. The room was not big enough to hold everyone who wanted to be there for that meeting, he said. They wanted elected officials to pay attention, he added. I had a leg up on my opponent because I was. There you go. There you go, man. This is like proving my ideology right, like 2 paragraphs in advance, because I keep explaining my ideology and then I would read a paragraph or 2 down and the people would just say exactly what I thought. So yeah, I mean, like I like to say that like this sort of thing, these sorts of victories are inevitable when they happen. When we have the organizing capacity and the people to actually put these DSA candidates into their elections and to help get them through it and to organize around it, like once we have that capacity to do this everywhere, the victories will be inevitable. Like I said, the other people, the rest of the Democrats, they're playing with their hands tied behind their back because they can't say the things that the DSA can say, right? So like it's inevitable, but don't get me wrong. That means that we have to do the work to actually build the organizing capacity for these DSA candidates to get pushed in front of people, to get on the ballot, to canvass for them, to phone bank for them, to get them like onto the airwaves so that people can learn about them. That's our responsibility as organizers. So anyway, that's what I have to say about that. That was a pretty good article. I feel like there's a lot of good analysis there. So let's go from a really good article to probably a really bad article. Let's go to the New York Post. New York's rag, the dish rag. I won't lie. I kind of love reading New York Post articles. For the same reason that I love watching Fox News. The unhinged levels are just so funny. Like, and like the bad analysis is like so, I don't know, just so fun to read and like laugh at that I just can't help myself. So we're going to be reading this article by Jeff. I think that's Jeff. My name is Jeff. Sorry. Oh, I'm such a millennial, dude. Stop it. Stop it, Clay. Okay. I can't scare people away before I even start reading the fucking article. Capitalists fight back. New York Dem launches campaign to counter socialist wave sweeping the party. Now, the reason that I chose this article is because I think this is going to be hilarious. I can't wait to see what the corporate establishment like tries to do to be able to counter like the DSA and the socialist organizing that's happening right now, because it's all going to collapse and fail spectacularly. At least that's my personal assumption. But let's read the article. Who knows? Maybe they will actually have good ideas, and it won't just be vain centrist consultant slop that's not going to motivate anybody to ever vote for any of their candidates. I don't know. Maybe they'll be right this time. So let's go ahead and read this article. After a wave of Democratic Socialist primary wins, a faction of Democrats is fighting back, arguing capitalism has raised more people out of poverty than any system in history and vowing to reclaim the party from the left. I would argue that China is currently raising the most people out of poverty in the history of the world, and they operate under a nominally communist regime. Now, don't get me wrong, it's a state capitalist regime. It is not an actual communist organization of the economy. However, they do nominally call themselves communists. So, anyway, there's a lot of us that don't like what's happening with the DSA, Democratic Socialists of America. Nobody's organized. Long Island Rep. Tom Suozzi, Democrat New York, told the Post, lamenting that critics go to cocktail parties and wring their hands while Democratic Socialists keep scoring wins. It's because that's all you know how to do, brother. That's all you know how to do. You don't know how to organize. Are you kidding me? The Democratic Party is a top-down party. It is the donors then talk to the consultants, which then talk to the candidates, which then blast their shit out in front of the public and just hope that no better candidate comes along to run against them. That's how the Democratic Party operates. That's fundamental to their structure, right? They are not they don't have like the Democratic centrists don't have like a base of support of like volunteers who are going to come out and like advocate for them, especially now. Do you understand how unpopular the Democratic Party is right now, right? Democratic Party unpopularity. Uh, 60%. How unpopular is the Democratic Party with Democratic voters? Let me see if I can find, I'm trying to find something to verify my assumptions. Maybe this will be good enough. I don't know. So this is from what, 20, this looks like it goes to 2023 or something. Look at the Democrats' unfavorability rating, though. It's going up to 60%. I thought that they were even more unfavorable, though, to be honest. I thought it was like 65 or 70, but I could be wrong on that. But yeah, it's incredibly unpopular. It's incredibly unpopular. So like when you're that unpopular, then you're not going to be able to motivate anybody to come out and like, you know, organize for you. And also that's not what your party, that's not how your party has been built. His concern was underscored by yet another win by a DSA-backed candidate who knocked off 30-year congressional vet Representative Diana Delgado in Colorado. We're for capitalism, not socialism. Capitalism has lifted more people out of poverty than any system in the history of the world, he said. It's created better outcomes for people, but that's not to say that we're supportive of just the status quo. DeGette fell to... DeGette, yeah, sorry. I think I misspoke earlier. DeGette fell to 29-year-old Milat Kuros, a DSA member herself endorsed by left-wing darling Senator Bernie Sanders. In last week's primary, after accusing Israel of committing genocide in Gaza while reaffirming comments calling the September 11 attacks inevitable. Two accurate statements. This one is confirmed by our own Pentagon that blowback occurred when it came to September 11th. I mean, if our own Pentagon agrees with it, I don't know. What do you hate the Pentagon? New York Post, do you think the Pentagon's lying to you? How unpatriotic of you. You're supposed to support our military. What are you doing? And then Israel, yeah, I mean, every human rights organization under the sun says that Israel's committing genocide in Gaza. The only people who don't are the ones just trying to pretend that it's not so that they can continue supporting the nation state of Israel. And Kiros is far from alone. Democrats have got to get back to traditional democratic values about looking out for working men and women and trying to improve their lot in life, Suozzi said. Except that's not what the Democratic Party stands for anymore. That's not what they've stood for a long time. They stand for their donors. They stand for their consultants. They stand for corporations. They do not stand for the working class. And in fact, what you're describing right there, the Democratic Party going back to standing for the working class, is exactly what the Democratic Socialists of America are currently doing. So your argument is that the Democrats should go out there and do what the Democratic Socialists are doing. You could just let the Democratic Socialists do it. I think you just don't like the socialist name. But also, they don't actually want to try to change the party to like actually be for working class individuals, because then their corporations and donors will dry up. Like all of their favorite Epstein associates will stop giving them calls back. So we'll stop inviting them to Epstein Island. So, you know, they don't like it. They aren't ever going to be for the working class. And so the DSA is stepping up. He co-organized a Promise to America pledge with Representative Adam Gray, Democrat, California, for lawmakers that declares, "We want safety, not lawlessness. We're proud of America, not ashamed of America." Who is this fucking for, man? Jesus Christ. Suozzi spoke while driving to the new Theodore Roosevelt presidential, I say that because this is all platitudes, man. These are all platitudes. These are not actual policies. These are just platitudes. Like, who gives a shit? You know what actual policies are? Fast and free buses, universal childcare, like city-run grocery stores, like lower your grocery costs. Like, those are actual policies. These are platitudes. These are not going to win anybody over. Suozzi spoke while driving to the new Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library in North Dakota. He said he went on his own to check it out, not as part of President Trump's visit that came a few hours earlier. "I couldn't hitch a ride on Air Force One," he quipped, as he comments come days after Senator John Fetterman blasted what he called an orgy of socialism in the party. What a weird way to describe it. The nation's most although, I mean, in that mush brain that he has, I guess it makes sense. Anyway, the nation's most prominent Democratic Socialist Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on Thursday shook up the U.S. Senate when she threw her support behind Abdul El-Sayed, the left-wing Senate candidate in Michigan. El-Sayed is battling Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, choice of Representative Haley Stevens. What gives? That girl. What gives? I can't do the voice, but she has a hilarious voice. She sounds like Bobby Hill. It's amazing. And her loss could foil the Dems' chance of retaking the Senate. Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think so personally. I think that Abdul is a much better candidate for the Democrats than Haley Stevens. No, Haley Stevens is not going to win over any fucking Republicans, man. Not as many as Abdul can win over. Like I said, there's stats on this. Zoran Mamdani did better with Trump voters than previous like centrist mayors or whatever. Like, you know, it's I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. Suozzi and his brethren may have their work cut out for them. A Gallup poll last September showed just 54% support for capitalism, down from 61% in 2010. And a shock poll last week showed a third of Democrats want Democratic Socialists in office. I'm surprised that it's still that low, man. Former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, a Democrat, California, in 2021 even questioned capitalism. In America, capitalism is our system. It is our economic system, but it's not served our economy as well as it should, adding that U.S. should not depart from that, but to improve that. Impossible. I mean, this is where I'm just going to always disagree with like social democrats and stuff, is that it's impossible to reform capitalism. Capitalism always leads to wealth accumulation and power accumulation into less and less hands. The end result of that is fascism, where you wield the state and you wield the power, that power that you've accumulated, and in order to forcefully maintain your wealth and forcefully maintain your power. There's no way to stop capitalism from like doing that unless you go to like a state capitalist model like China, where you have like a birdcage strategy where you never allow any you never allow any industry to acquire too much wealth and power that they would be able to actually control the government. Right now in America, you have like 5 companies that essentially control the United States government and use it as a as a fleshlight, whereas in China, at least, like the government can still control the corporations. They can break up the corporations. They can seize their wealth if they need to stop them from accumulating too much power and all that stuff. So, that's the difference. In capitalism, it's impossible. It's impossible to stop that wealth accumulation. Or like complete free market capitalism, at least. Like I said, state capitalism is different. 5 years later, she didn't betray any panic when she spoke to the Post after socialist candidates swept a trio of New York congressional races. I wouldn't make so much of it. Nobody makes a big deal when a left-wing person wins in San Francisco and all of a sudden, New York. I loved our incumbents. I wish they had won. But in terms of what it means, it's what it means for New York. It isn't what it means for the rest of the country. Keep thinking that. I love it when you underestimate us. It's the best. Because it just means it just makes it easier. To be fair, though, I don't think they're actually underestimating us. I think that's the message that they're giving out. I think that they're really scared and they're really doing everything they possibly can to try to stop this from spreading to purple and even red districts because they're incredibly scared of how successful it could be. If it keeps growing, which it will keep growing. It turns out capitalism is alive and very well. Then President Joe Biden declared as the nation added 850,000 to payrolls during the recovery from COVID-19 in 2021. Vice President Kamala Harris, who picked up the baton after Biden's 2024 debate disaster, another consequence of capitalism, by the way, is our gerontocracy and our two-party system that makes it impossible for us to have a functional government. But, whatever, has been conducting her own outreach to socialists. It was revealed last week she has been phoning and texting Mayor Mamdani and met one-on-one with AOC at an event on empowering Black women in Chicago. She's coming to kiss the ring. That was taken as a sign of her presidential ambitions. During her failed sprint to the White House 2 years ago, she told the Economic Club of Pittsburgh she was a capitalist. I promise you I will be pragmatic in my approach, she vowed them, which is why she will never win. Okay, well, that was kind of interesting. It was basically exactly what I was expecting. I love when these like centrist Dems that are completely bought and paid for by politicians, or by corporations, tried to pretend like they're going to be able to organize. They'll never be able to organize, man. It's a lost cause. You can't organize from a top down, right? You just can't. Like, not a mass movement. And an organization of a political body has to be from the ground up, which is what the DSA is. So it's impossible for them they will never be able to stop this from happening. But hey, they can keep trying and they can keep pretending. Like I said, I love when they underestimate us. So